Good evening. Yeah, I'm kind of amazed too. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones. Welcome to the 2022 Minnesota Northwoods Writers Conference Evening Reading Series. My name is Sean Hill, and I'm the conference director. This is our 10th conference. We're usually pretty low-key about things, but that does feel kind of big, especially after going virtual for a couple of years. So now we're back in Bemidji, and looking forward to another great week of faculty readings and working through being back in place. I think the readings are going to help us get there. I'm thrilled that we have Kimberly Blaeser kicking off this week's Evening Reading Series. Before Kim reads, I have a couple of announcements. Those of you who are in person and who are virtual auditors on Zoom, remember to tune in or be here in the American Indian Resource Center tomorrow morning for Ben Percy's Craft Talk. You don't want to miss that. Workshop and auditor gathering will follow sort of after that. And we have a picnic and pontoon boat ride arranged for you guys in Diamond Point, which is next door at the pavilion, following workshops and auditor gathering. So as I said, we have people zooming in, and Sarah's going to explain how we're handling the Q&A following Kim's reading. With that, Sarah.
Hi everybody, welcome. So good to see you all here. We have our online auditors, so we have a couple of things we're doing different also in terms of how do we make sure we're not all touching this microphone, all of that. So you'll see over here in the center a blue X on the floor. When it comes time for Q&A, we'll ask that you approach the mic. We'll have a mic on that stand right there, and you can ask your question that way. You can just look at the speaker. The camera will catch you there. If you're not willing to be on camera, maybe we can figure out a different way to get that question in the future. We can talk about that afterward. But we will have about 7 minutes or so, between 6 or 7 minutes saved kind of at the end of the reading in Q&A for our online virtual auditor liaison, Elena over here, to field some questions from our online cohort, okay, so they can kind of participate. This is a little bit of an experiment tonight, so we're going to do our best with it. So just approach the mic. This should be on at that point. We'll come over and turn it up for you. If it's not, there's just a little switch on here, flip it up, and it'll go automatically into the system, okay? Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, I don't know, we got ambitious. Let's take a break and be virtual for 2 years and then do some new things. Here we go. So I need to thank some people and some entities before we proceed. I want to thank the poets collected in the New Poets of Native Nations Anthology and Hyde Erdrich, its editor, and Grey Wolf Press for the generous donation in support of the New Poets of Native Nations Women's Scholarship. We also want to thank an anonymous past MNWC participant for their great generous donation in support of the Charles W. Scrutcheon Emerging Writer of Color Scholarship. This conference is supported in part by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. So thank you, Minnesotans. And we want to thank Bemidji State University for its support and encouragement. We are grateful to be back in our home in the Northwoods at Bemidji State University, beside the lake known as Bemidji, where the river crosses, which has been a sacred gathering place for countless generations of indigenous peoples, including Dakota, Lakota, and Anishinaabe. who remain the spiritual caretakers and thriving members of the greater community to which we all belong. Situated as we are between three Ojibwe reservations, Leech Lake, White Earth, and Red Lake, we recognize and support the sovereignty of Native nations. We will continue to work with Indigenous teachers, elders, and youth to protect and honor all our relationships with the land, all our relatives, and the truth. This evening, I'm grateful for Kim Blaeser and that she will be kicking off this reading series. Kimberly Blaeser, writer, photographer, and scholar, has served as Poet Laureate of Wisconsin and is author of 5 poetry collections: Apprentice to Justice, Copper Yearning, which won the Edna Nolte Poetry Book Award from the Council of Wisconsin Writers, and was named one of the best Native books in 2019 by the Tribal Council Journal. Her most recent collection, the bilingual Ikwe Nime, Dancing Resistance. Blaeser also edited the anthology Traces in Blood, Bone, and Stone, Contemporary Ojibwe Poetry, and her scholarly study, Gerald Visner, Writing in the Oral Tradition, was the first Native authored book-length study of an Indigenous author. Blaeser is an enrolled member of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe who grew up on the White Earth Reservation. A Anishinaabe activist and environmentalist, Kimberly Blaeser is the founding director of the literary organization NAPO, Indigenous Native Nations Poets. In 2021, she was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Native Writers Circle of the Americas. Kim is a professor emeritus of English and Indigenous Studies at UW Milwaukee and MFA faculty member at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. There is so much to say about Kim, but I'll just say that I got the great fortune to read with her and be in conversation a couple of years ago, and I knew immediately that I needed to bring her here to this conference, to this community. And I'm so grateful that she accepted my invitation. Please join me in welcoming Kimberly Blaeser.
Hello, my relatives. It's so great to be here with you tonight. I want to say thanks, miigwech, to Sean Hill and to all of the Northwoods people who have been kind enough to arrange this for us. It's wonderful to be back in person, isn't it? Even masked. Yeah. So I thought that I would read, not talk too much about the poems, because you will have an opportunity to ask questions. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. So as Sean said, I'm enrolled at White Earth. I grew up there. And we also have a water access cabin adjacent to the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. And during the pandemic, we spent many months there. It's hard to be exposed to COVID when only the beaver and the bear and the loons are there to say, you know, hello, they weren't masked. Anyway, while I was there, I was asked during that election, when so many things happened, to write a poem about the place I was, which happened to be the Cowish River watershed and so on, and to also take account of why it's important to vote for Earth. So that's where this first poem comes in. It's also an introduction to me. It's called The Where in My Belly. Scientists say my brain and heart are 73% water. They underestimate me. A small island menace, I emerged among Minnesota's northern lakes, the where of Monoman, wild rice in my belly. I am from boats and canoes and kayaks, from tribal ghosts who rise at dawn, dance like wisps of fog on water. My where is White Earth Nation and white pine forests, knees summer stained with blueberries, pink lady slippers open and wild as my feet. I grew up where math was canasta, where we recited times tables while ice fishing at 20 below, spent nights whistling to northern lights. I am from old medicine barks and teas, from early, the air damp with cedar, the crack of a mick, beaver tail on water. Their echo now, a warning to where fish become a percentage of mercury, become a poison statistic, to where copper mines back against 1 million blue acres of sacred. I am from Nubik and Ogeechee-Daqueg, women warriors and water protectors, from seed gatherers and song makers, the wet where pulse in my belly whispers and repeats like the endless chant of waves on ledge rock, waves on ledge rock, on ledge rock, on waves, on water, Nubik. So I also want to place us in the history, right? And this poem deals with, let's just say, the colonial project and how it's manifested in so many ways in our world. Poem on disappearance. Beginning with our continent, draw 1491. Each mountain compass point indigenous. Trace trade routes, languages, seasonal migrations don't become attached. Yes, reshape by discovery, displacement, move your pencil point quickly now, as if pursued. A cavalry of possession that erases homelands. We shrink in time lapse of colonial barter, disappear. Now draw a brown face painted for ceremony, half a face, nothing. Draw nothing around a crumpled bird body, no wings. Draw emptiness inside desecrated burial mounds. A stretch of absence where fallopian tubes once curved in hope. Sketch void across Buffalo Prairie. Draw the empty of elk, of passenger pigeon, of silver trout. Conjure with your hand the shape of girl blooming, curves of face, her laughing eyes. You've seen them, postered and amber alerted, missing, evening news, and gone. Draw a woman wrapped in a blanket, a child's body weighted. Draw stones sinking into every river on the map. Draw carrion blackening skies, carrion, plucking vision from round brown faces, draw missing, draw murdered. Work carefully now. Turn your hand to the new continent. Again, picture it. Nothing. And then, because we are celebrating in various ways at various times, Juneteenth, I wanted to read a poem related to, again, all of the history around this, and particularly in Minnesota, the death of George Floyd. So you may remember there was also this complicated thing that was happening with our post office right in that era. And you'll hear some allusions to that in here as well as to those laws and treaties that have never been repealed, but are ineffectual because they're not enforced. Dead letter. Kneeling before what God on another man's neck? How we lynch now in America, a forgery of justice, protect and serve defunct as dead letter laws. George Floyd, another notch on the pearl handle of power. Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, Dontre Hamilton. Notch, notch, power notch. Spell me another word for master. Picture postcards of lynching sent. Videos of murder by police addressed to each hall of justice. Undeliverable. Addressee unknown. 2. And what if hope crashes through the door? Migazi burns, a riot of flames, a sorrow of suffocating bodies. I can't breathe your toxic America. Sell me windpipe dreams of cedar fluted breath, a song for continuing in our shelter, in our streets, without the phallic generals. For continuing beyond slave ships and warships and Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria ships, beyond chains, treaties, internment camps, boarding schools and reservation schools, segregated schools, removals, the phrenology of race and race and race. How we race now, America, to new emancipation, no peace without justice. Let us mask ourselves in hope, all broken of this nation. Kneel now together and count 9 minutes to change. So I appreciate you being with me through those less than easy poems. I had a conversation after my workshop today with 2 people who are probably some here. There you are. And I told them it's a longer story, but let's just say that we had the first retreat for INAPO, Indigenous Nations Poets, in Washington, D.C. at the end of April, when Joy Harjo closed out her term as U.S. Poet Laureate, her 3rd term as U.S. Poet Laureate. And she had this wild dance party, which you can see photos of online. But anyway, as I was leaving, well, first we had a faculty reading, and I read this poem that I had written for Nathan Phillips. You remember who Nathan Phillips is? He's the Indigenous man who was on the mall in DC when the MAGA wearing hat boys came and confronted him, and it was a big issue 2 or 3 Januaries ago. And so I was in DC, so I read the poem. And then we're leaving the dance party, the last event of our program, and one of my fellows came up and said, "The man you read that poem for is here." And so I went up and had a conversation with him and told him how I admired the way he handled himself in that situation. And I was invited to write a poem for a collection called, or a special issue called Dignity as an Endangered Species. You know, the fact that dignity itself is an endangered species. And so I wrote on the dignity of gestures for Nathan Phillips. And that evening I was able to read it to him, present him the book, and have a lovely conversation. So I was just saying today that sometimes the poem finds its way. So I wanted to share that with you here tonight. On the dignity of gestures for Nathan Phillips. 1, remember hands ungloved and notched by life. Watch them pour stovetop coffee into tin cups, lift cross poles onto fence bucks, mend nets, birth your children. 2, pay homage and speak the names of sweepers and shovelers, canners, cafeteria cooks, baby doctors, and deathbed watchers. Esme, Dale, Margaret, David, Mike, and Colleen. 3, receive all gifts, crocheted Afghan or prize money, with humility. Gratitude spreads easy as butter. Unworthiness endures. 4, watch the eyes of turtle. Admire the neck courting of swan. Study wing beats and tail rhythms. Note how otter sows stoop to lift pups. Listen to wind in fall, to trees bending and unbroken. Announce like spring frogs the unfolding of each holy year. Carry candles into cathedrals, poetry into prisons. 5, do not become beast in the fray. Remember the indigenous hands that drummed on, the man who stood calm. Another of these more uplifting poems about standing in kinship. We all have the same little bones in our foot, 26 with funny names like navicular. Together, they build something strong. Our foot arch, a pyramid holding us up. The bones don't get cast when they break. We tape them one phalange to its neighbor for support. Other things like sorrow work that way too. Find healing in the leaning, in the closeness. Our feet have 1/4 of all the bones in our body. Maybe we should give more honor to feet and to all those tiny but blessed cogs in the world, communities, the forgotten architecture of friendship. Another change in tone. I'm not gonna, as I said, not talk about it, although I could. The knife my father gave me at 8, 1 inch longer than my empty ring finger, no field master multifunction wonder, a single blade case, slimline trapper, pocket knife my brother would teach me to thumb, open, closed, open, closed, open again, until I could slide it out quick and smooth, until I could point it, flick my wrist, throw and sink it every time blade first in the sweet summer white earth clay. Respect it, wipe it clean on my jeans. The knife my father gave me at 8 whispered to me the things he left unsaid. Small, sharp, and pearl-handled pretty. It does the work of any man's blade. So we're still all unsure, right? We have pandemic, we come out, we go back, so this is a poem just sort of, we all have written works about what it's been like, this era. And this is called Another Poem in Which I Watch. Another morning ache wakes me, breath refusing to come easy. I don't mean this is a physical malady, perhaps not a malady. This humanness wakes me. An April in which I count, dark seeping out, fragile this time after dreaming, before 5, before going to the window as I do. When I do, I find you, gray against the eternal mottle of winter leaves, this season we call wait for rain. Find you not waiting, but finding tiny sprouts, leaves, or maybe only buds, but green against the tired carpet of what has fallen. And you who do not pause on the poetic side of longing, this to be praised, I think. Here where I am still at the window, still watching, well, oh, Florius, you are snapping the new and eating all you can find. Oh, love, would it help to tell how your rough gray coat is scarred, like me, a patchwork of what has not been kind, and why I am awake too early to worry and wanting the green on my tired pandemic tongue. I could keep the white secret of your tale, fist this image tight, and open it again tomorrow before 5 in the strangle of day, or I could follow your leap into the dense hillside of not yet, of soon, spend that feast of flash, of bristle, like a flag, they say, but no, that won't do. Not today in the aftermath of false patriots. Here in the gloom, gray, broken, your scut a bloom, a bursting, where color is a small holy. I watch each swift lift, each wave, a language of flare and fly, of sudden and full on sublime. Like the drama of roached heads at a June powwow. Yes, this arch, a sketch of dance, fusion or trace, or enough to start my breath again. All right, I need a drink of water. Ooh, I got a big, ooh. All right. So I think I picked out too many poems, so I'm going to skip a couple. Why does it always take longer when in person, right? Oh, I have to do this one though. Let's see. In light of, I'm sorry to be so sort of political, but in light of another situation we're facing in this country, I just want to read this poem, which is called Fantasies of Women. They say there was an old woman who lived in a shoe, children spanking bed, no food. It's an old story, one to rival the Peter Tale, who kept his wife in a pumpkin shell, or Jack Sprat, who coveted all the 90% lean cuts of meat, while his ever-expanding, squat, round wife tumbles over the sides of a tiny kitchen chair, overfilling the page on which she is drawn. We keep turning that page, but one caricature follows another. Some claim women always were the delicate sex, Fainting, timid, helpless souls, you know that line. The length and breadth of those whose names have scrambled the letters of femininity into unrecognizable derivations. Annie Oakley, Gloria Steinem, Wilma Mankiller, Rigoberto Menchú, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, in pants or full veil, in every state of dress or undress, Cher's navel, the jewel on Cleopatra's forehead, burn like all beacons of dissent. I heard, a nation is never defeated until the hearts of its women are trampled upon the earth. This one, I believe, for I grew up among women who could swallow a raw heart whole or in infinitesimal pieces, deer heart, rabbit heart, turtle heart, and did swallow and chew, chew and swallow their own red hearts beating for survival, for survival, for survival, for survival. And this is the single story we write with our lives. Women of travoy, ox, or minivan, of African brown barefoot toes, bound Asian feet, or $75 a pop Birkenstocks. Together we walk our houses of history, track through the paths of indentured servants, girl babies slain and buried, this black dirt of bias exposed, overcome in story cycles of scarlet fecundity, told through the fires of many tongues, and translated again in the labor of women. Now we sing. There was a young woman who lived in a shoe-obsessed, commercialized, overstocked world. She had many children and knew just what to do. Raise them, to share the burdens of all the people, to unearth the fantastic lies they were taught to walk upon, to devour fear, chew and swallow, and to cast their hearts for survival. Okay, so I went through a lot of trouble to get these behind me. I put people through a lot of trouble to get these behind me, so I think I should use them. So I do this, I'm working on this group of poems that I call pictopoems. And briefly, they're inspired by Anishinaabe pictographs and Native American ledger art, and I can say more about that. But I'm still working on my own ability to do them, to do the technology that makes them look like I want them to look. But I'm going to share a couple with you. And so this first one, oh, sorry, I blanked on. So I didn't even say, so most of the poems I've been reading to you this evening are poems from as yet unpublished book. It's called Ancient Light. So it's my new manuscript. And would you just be so sad if I didn't have the poem? Oh, here it is. Okay, I would be. Okay, so I seriously, I could talk about this so much, but I'm just going to read, okay, and ask you questions. So am I in the way of this somehow? How would that work? Is it just fine? Okay. Crane curves of this woodland sky, your floral wings a fissure. Behind you, ancient light enters. Against beads of primal darkness, sky patterns pitch and slope into bloom. Stitched here is first translucence, sun turning the holes of your throat to a vessel of fire. Even now, your body lengthens, angled like a sundial against the cup of all reluctance. Our rock cold clan longing, weighted anchor of time. Your voice a dawn, a torch of language, jashagi, song flame of your tongue gives light. Okay, and we can switch. And this is a moment for me to talk about, I also am a photographer, so most of the images, I think all the images you'll see tonight are my images. And obviously layers of text and image, right? If that's kind of funky, no worries, I can do the closing and come back to it. Makes sense? Or should I give it another minute? Okay, no worries. Okay, I just forgive the strangeness of anything, but this is called Of Poetry and the Making of Lines. How delicate, dark material of dream, what we become in space, an etching, stilled vector, 2 dimensions of holy, a cut out hunger, sweet shadow-filled trace, how we bargain against lurid possession, silhouette our edges in letters. So clearly, I'm trying to mirror what's there, the visual and the poem. Okay. And then I'm going to have Sean kind of step through a couple. And just want to say about this is it's about the Earth Diver. And I'm not going to read it. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to go to a different one and read because there's quite a few here. But I wanted to say that it's meant to be the sort of dream-like image, right? And this is meant to also be, so it's dreams of water bodies. So the language itself, one side English, the other Anishinaabe-Moan, that together makes a water body diving, if you can see that. Okay, so then you can click through the other. And I know in northern Minnesota, who wouldn't know that's not wajush, that's not a muskrat, that's a beaver, but it's a dream, people. And I did, you know, the beaver was more colorful than the muskrat. Okay, what else do I have? Okay, I'm going to read this one. This came out of a visit I made to the Kingdom of Bahrain, and that's where those images are. And they were taken in the October before the Arab Spring, and this is a poem that I wrote when many of the Bahraini people were being arrested, tortured, imprisoned, and one young woman was arrested for reading her poem in public, and long story. And it reminded me of the situation that the people of Ukraine face, and how here we are in this beautiful space in Bemidji, in this gorgeous building, and we're safe, right? And how do we act in that? How can we do something other than say, oh, too bad, and flip the channel? So I keep asking myself that, and I'm going to ask you that. Unlawful assembly. Don't hurry to safety. Each hour your flowered room grows smaller. Everywhere at the periphery of vision, windows shatter into triangles of mosaic light. There in the lonely fragments, a YouTube dictator declares victory. Blood flattens and darkens, the scent of rebellion, smoke, fire, and ash, all pungent in the still images sacrificed to history. Somewhere, the flapping door of an overturned wagon thumps steadily in a deserted street, echoes absent hands. Okay, and we're going to look at, I think, the rest of them. Just, you know, what can you, you're Minnesotan and you're preoccupied with water. What does the lineation of water look like? This is someplace Sarah would recognize, I think. It's in the Southwest. It's Bandelier National Monument. Anyway, keep going. I could read this one. This is from a longer poem, but I'll just read what's here. How do we translate the flashing fins of poisoned fish? What other alphabet do you know to spell